There are things in this world that we cannot explain, yet we as humans attempt to find meaning in said seemingly impossible events or phenomena. Today I present you with a compilation series archiving and discussing some of my favorite conspiracies, urban legends, and generally unexplained or unsolved things that make their way around the corners of the internet. Whether I personally believe in what I will discuss does not matter. The only thing that does matter is that we all have fun examining some weird happenings in real life and online. If you have any new or more information regarding any of the topics I will be talking about in this video or in future installments of this series, please do not hesitate to contact me in the comments or social links below. So with that, sit back, relax, and let's delve in. The world of martial arts is not as it may seem to many. It can be corrupt, fraudulent, and in this case, exceedingly dangerous. People like the infamous Count Dante and the deep rabbit hole that is fake martial arts, it can be hard to separate what is real and what is not, such as the case of today's first subject. Jo Blythe, or at least that is the name the internet knows him as, is a dojo master and sensei residing in, or had resided in, Dumfries, Virginia. A video had surfaced on YouTube, allegedly recorded in the winter of 1984, featuring Blythe himself, a pupil of his, and a younger man. In the video, the young man claims to have been taught karate by Jesus Christ and wished to demonstrate what he learned to Blythe. Blythe then gives his blessing and the young man begins to demonstrate, making it clear that he does not intend to hurt Blythe or his student. However, the video takes a darker turn immediately, with the student, later identified as William J. Dennis, unexpectedly beginning to fight and causing the young man to defend himself, still pleading that he does not want to hurt him and that he is not a fighter. Dennis then continues to fight the young man as the man struggles to defend himself, possibly due to not having any sort of proper training. Dennis begins to knee the young man repeatedly, push him into a metal pole, and stomp his head repeatedly until he is knocked unconscious. Jo Blythe then commands the pupils to drag the young man out the back door. He films the trail of blood, and the video ends. The man who was assaulted in this video was, to this day, never identified. The only way we know of his existence was the aforementioned video that was apparently uploaded to Blythe's personal YouTube. However, both the YouTube channel and in turn the video have been erased off the face of the internet, with the only real evidence of his existence being screenshots and a video by Scare Theater from 2016. Since then, it has become a very widely discussed and disputed topic on the legitimacy of this case. Many believe that Willie J. Dennis had killed the unidentified man during the events of the video and Blythe allowed it to happen in his own dojo. According to a Reddit post on the r/unsolved mysteries subreddit, it is stated that police have not taken any proper steps to apprehend the men involved in this video. The post goes on to say, one police officer claims to have spoken to him and that he was okay, but neglected to get his name. However, while researching the video, I found a possible lead to who the unidentified man is. According to an article regarding the case on FightState.com, a Facebook page named Justice for Kung Fu Guy claims that the man in the video is one Ricardo Dyer of Henrico, Virginia, who had been reported missing on December 7th of 1987, with the goal being to find any relatives to help identify if the man in the video is Dyer. However, the Facebook page has not been updated in a year, and the post itself is almost 5 years old. Another thing is that while both the video and the reported date match the month, the years are completely off, with Dyer being reported missing 3 years after the first video was allegedly recorded. Links further regarding the case are said to be few and far between, so we may never know the status of the people involved. As the years go by, it becomes more and more likely that some of the parties could not exist anymore. However, if you or someone you know have any information regarding Bobby Jo Blythe or the Ricardo Dyer case, do not hesitate to contact the proper authority channels. The 5-hour video is more typical of your standard conspiracy theory that you may find while reading forum posts into the long hours of the night. Sources claim that there exists a video that proves the existence of aliens. Now that may seem more plausible given the recent news at the time of writing of this video. However, there are very few links that provide any information on the 5-hour video. One link goes to a Blogspot post discussing the topic and claims that it has been mentioned in several underground sites and that many have seen the video despite it having never shown up online. However, it does not go into much detail save for providing a few supposed screenshots of the video. Now, you can make up the theory that you can't find the video due to some government cover-up, but I'm gonna be honest, I have seen most of these screenshots in other videos on YouTube, so I don't even know if the 5-hour video exists or what I'm seeing is segments of a larger video. I just don't really know. According to the legend, Herkimer, Iowa is, or in this case was, a small Midwestern town that supposedly vanished in the late 1920s. According to the obscure urban legend wiki, the urban legend had allegedly first appeared online in 2015 when a person named Colin Hudson, author of the blog Strange State, had claimed that his mother received an email that appeared to be a historical overview of the mysterious town. The email goes as so. One recalls the town of Herkimer, Iowa during the 1920s and early 30s. For years, people passed by the bustling burg of Herkimer without giving it a second thought. Many people even drove through it, and there are rumors that transactions took place between tourists and the pale, mute Herkimerovians. In 1928, the first ontological doubts about the town began when aerial photographs showed only empty fields where there should have been homes and streets and stores surrounded by farms and waving fields of grain. A week or so later, a lost tourist had his Marmont Speedster topped off with gasoline at the Herkimer Esso station, then 2 miles beyond the town's borders discovered that his tank was empty. He turned back to demand a refund from the conniving general store and gas pump emporium, only to discover that, regardless of how far he walked, the town remained the same distance ahead of him. Fortunately, another motorist picked him up after an hour or two and replenished his car's fuel supply, but the man had been shaken to the core and required a prolonged sojourn in an alpine sanitarium. In 1929, the Davenport Clarion Sun Telegraph newspaper published both stories. Doubtlessly, there would have been a strong public reaction had not the story appeared in the same issue of the paper as the Wall Street stock market crash. In the following week's edition, the last one before Clarion Sun Telegraph itself had failed, was a strong protest from an apparent resident of Herkimer, a certain Fatima Morgana, disputing the apparent non-existence of the town and relating her life story there as a school teacher and anti-saloon league activist. But her letter to the editor was lost in the brouhaha of plant closings, stockbrokers' suicides, and the sudden popularity of apple sellers on street corners. Herkimer's own newspaper, the weekly Bugle-Picayune Advertiser, ran the now classic headline, "Rumors of our non-existence have been greatly exaggerated," for which they were sued by the estate of the late Samuel Clemens. Herkimer remained undisturbed throughout 1930 and 1931. Passerby still waved at children playing in backyards as they passed on Route 41. Although there was little traffic now, and much of it was horse-drawn wagon as farmers attempted to save their old homesteads by traveling to larger cities to vend their wares. But disaster struck in 1932 when a convoy of Illinois farm families fleeing the ruins of their Dust Bowl farms for California decided to spend the night on the outskirts of Herkimer. Two of these wandering souls pulled the camp's meager store of pennies and nickels and went into the town to purchase necessary supplies. There was always a risk in entering town, since Illies and Okies were rumored to be thieves as well as vagabonds, and they were not welcomed by townspeople. The men, Paducah Bankforth and Tribulation Astonices, plodded to the general store, pausing for a moment to check the gasoline prices on the pump outside before entering. Imagine their surprise when they were unable to mount the steps leading to the store, their feet each time passing through the lowermost step as though it was a cloud. Convinced that this was some sort of plot to prevent outsiders from shopping at the store, they attempted to scale the steps using an old board found nearby. Imagine their surprise when their feet passed through both the board and the steps as easily as a potato passes through the smoke of a campfire. Terrified, the men ran back to their nomadic camp and reported what they had seen, only to be accused of spending the group's hard-gotten money on illegal hooch rather than on beans and bacon. But they displayed the money and challenged others in the camp to try the same experiment. A group of a dozen men, some armed, went back to the general store and, lo and behold, had the same eerie experience. The caravan covered its fires and decamped with all deliberate speed, but the story quickly circulated, and soon a group of state police were ordered to investigate the phenomenon. They went to the Herkimer Sheriff's Office to converse, and otherwise hobnob with their brother law enforcement officials. The group's leader approached the office of this guardian of the peace and attempted to knock on the door, only to see his hand pass through the thick oak as though it were merely painted steam. The report began the gradual decline of Herkimer. It became less substantial with every passing day, and passerby noted the absence of children playing and the growing seediness of the houses and barns. Then, on May 7, 1932, Phineas Bumph, a Huguenot immigrant farmer, passed by at dawn with his cargo of produce, and to what his wondering eyes did appear but nothing. Where the town had stood were only abandoned fields and long-rotted fences, a cast-iron bathtub used long ago as a watering trough for livestock, sat alone in the field of weeds, a sole relic of human presence. Herkimer was no more. Many years later, a gypsy caravan camped on the site but left abruptly. The Ataman of the group, Bax Talo, told a Roma-friendly neighboring city councilman that the place was saturated with the tears of the dispossessed and with the despair of those who never bore names. After presenting this story, Cullen had claimed that he believed the story was entirely fictional and probably a form of chainmail. Gareth Haslam, author of Anomaly Info, had also backed this up, stating the newspaper mentioned in the story had never existed at all, leading to further confirmation that this internet legend was purely fictional. This one is rather odd and possibly the most popular topic in this video. So, apparently, according to various news outlets like New York Post, Screen Rant, and more, Disney has chosen the name for the movie Frozen as a means to hide search results regarding another popular urban legend about how Walt Disney's body was preserved by cryogenics, or in layman's terms, freezing. While it is widely accepted that Walt Disney was cremated, this hasn't stopped the rumors of his frozen body, nor the movie Frozen being used to suppress search results regarding the mystery. According to Screen Rant, who initially proposed/fueled the search result theory, stated that before December 2013, the time of Frozen's release, searching Disney Frozen would only yield results regarding the freezing of Disney's corpse. So, Disney devised a plan to preserve their squeaky clean image and release a movie named Frozen. Regardless, it is definitely an interestingly odd, if not harmless theory, and actually kind of funny. The next one proposes a very odd question since its inclusion in Internet Conspiracy and Legend. The vaguely titled 2006 Volleyball Incident may sound fake at first, but once you dive in, it presents itself as a dividing line between being a cover-up and another bizarre case of the Mandela effect. According to a Blogspot post on the topic, the story goes as this. One major fact of the story that I should mention before we dive into anything serious is that I have precisely no idea when this story came into prominence. I can find reference to it from a few years ago, and that's about it. Given that the story is from 2006, one can immediately assume that the story was fabricated based off that. However, as we'll soon learn, that may not be the case. Anyways, the story surrounding this event is pretty simple. Supposedly a shooting or bombing took place during a school volleyball event in either Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Utah, Oregon, or Montana, though the first two are most commonly claimed. It is stated that around 17 to 24 people were killed. From here, the incident was covered up immediately. No word of the shooting/bombing was ever made public, and the victims were effectively erased from the memories of their family and friends. How they accomplished this varies on who you ask. Some will say that the family and friends were paid off to remain quiet. Anyone who spoke about the truth of the incident was silenced in a tragic accident like Jeffrey Epstein. Others claim that something a lot more psychological in nature happened. Whether by being repeatedly beaten or verbally abused, there are those who claim that anyone with any sort of relation to the victims of the events like this, more on this later, were effectively programmed into having forgotten their family, loved ones, and or acquaintances that were killed in this massacre. This is something I sadly can't elaborate upon because I'm not terribly familiar with it, but I believe it has to do with basically creating a split personality of sorts. I think the Maruchuran candidate theory utilizes something similar to this. I'd argue that sounds like something out of a Tom Clancy novel, but truth be told, the entire story is something one would expect from an espionage or black operations story. Completely off the grid, off the record, with the identities of those involved being scrubbed from the books. This leaves some to believe the story is a case of the Mandela effect, or for the uninitiated, and to the best of my knowledge, that's when people believe that one thing is happening when it never did. I wrote about it a bit back when I covered what is called the line that never existed, and it provides a link if you wish to read about that. As for the name, it's derived from those who believed former South African President Nelson Mandela had died before he really did. The story could, in theory, end there, but there also exists a bit more to the story. For starters, most people say that a lot of information exists on the dark web. In my experiences, this is often not the case unless you're someone who actively seeks out either child pornography or uses the hidden wiki. As such, I didn't bother pursuing that lead and instead stuck to incessantly Googling until I found some more information. The reality of it was, there wasn't much to be found. What little there was amounted to some theories on the possible motive for the shooting that might have been. Some assume the United States government might have wanted a certain individual dead, and those killed were merely caught in the crossfire. As for those who carried out the shooting, some claim it was either paramilitary forces or mercenaries. Other claims that it was a precursor of sorts to the Sandy Hook massacre. The final thing I'll mention in regards to this story is the sources I have, which are archive threads from 4chan and a few posts on Reddit. I really dislike utilizing Reddit as a source, as I think that the website is filled with people who operate under a hive mind, but nevertheless, it was the only place that could lead me to one plausible explanation for this entire story. Also, as stated earlier, I'm sure there are more to this hidden on the deep web. If you've never been there, by the way, I believe the easiest, or at least the most commonly used browser to use is Tor. Some state Tor is compromised, however, so make do with whatever you wish to use. At the same time, anything that isn't indexed by Google or any other mainstream browser technically qualifies as being on the deep web, so make of that what you will. With that said, the story of the 2006 volleyball incident more or less ends, unless there is more to it on the dark web that I didn't bother sniffing out. The story as is something that as short as could be, so with that, let's advance to the theories section. Several theories have arisen regarding this possible off-the-record incident. Besides the aforementioned government cover-up typical of your standard conspiracy, other claims that it was a social experiment, a la Alex Jones thinks Sandy Hook never happened. The Blogspot post states, "The Sandy Hook massacre is another story in and of itself that I may one day cover should I bother to tackle stories like it more often. For the time being, I don't have the willpower to go down that rabbit hole. If you're unfamiliar with the theories surrounding it, the gist is that the shooting was faked in an effort to erode the rights of Second Amendment and other various freedoms. To achieve this, the government, under then-President Barack Obama, staged a mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. How they did this is something I still don't quite fully understand, as I have never read into it much, but I believe it's that children were never real and the families were crisis actors. Said actors are often used for FEMA, training exercises, and the like, so presumably they were all brought to the scene and paid to act out the part of grieving families while the police went in to shoot the perpetrator. Some, however, claim that the shooting was real, but the shooter, Adam Lanza, was a Manchurian candidate or government stooge. Others claim that the FBI or CIA really did the shooting. Either way, the end result is more or less the same. Erode the freedoms of the American people via brainwashing and/or mind control. The power of suggestion and repeated lies that become the truth in the minds of the masses. So how does this tie into the 2006 volleyball incident? Well, to some, they see it as something of a reversal of Sandy Hook, where the shooting/bombing itself was real, the end result was a complete and total cover-up. For what reason, I'm not sure, but a common explanation is that it was to see if the government could really get away with it. The success may have emboldened the government to stage more and more false flag shootings in order to erode the aforementioned rights, and now here we are today. Another theory claims that it was a targeted assassination that went downhill and caused many more casualties than intended. I could crack about a dozen jokes regarding George W. Bush and how he was a war hawk. However, I'd like to think they make themselves. Whether you believe that an Iraqi insurgent was at the school and Bush wanted him dead, or John Doe 2 from the Oklahoma City bombing was a janitor there and they finally put him down, it's all the same. The operation went south and they covered it up with zero media coverage. As such, the incident now exists more as a conspiracy theory than an act of heroism at a random school in Nebraska or South Dakota. No more, no less. The belief of this theory and its variants will vary heavily on who you are as a person. If you're of the belief that the government is behind these kinds of atrocities, this may be more fuel and ammunition to your arguments against those who don't believe in it. Personally, I've never been big on those theories, as I think there are a fair number of factors that don't quite add up, but to each their own. Here at Vertigo's Funhouse, we don't discriminate against those who believe in things, so let's move on. Lastly, one more theory also explains that it was merely mistaken for other real-life crisis situations such as the Platte Canyon high school hostage crisis or a bombing at a volleyball game in Afghanistan. However, it's also just debated that the entire thing never happened and it was a hoax. So, what do you think? Did the 2006 volleyball incident actually happen, or do you think it's just a dark joke made by the internet? Let me know in the comments below. Okay, so this last one is not really an urban legend or conspiracy, but something my friends and I had stumbled upon in one of our regular quarantine Skype calls. So one night, while browsing r/internet mysteries, I had just been reading off random posts made by the subreddit's users. One interesting one I stumbled across that I cannot find anymore regarding a YouTube channel that was apparently advertised in the ad space sections on 4chan, specifically /TV. With nothing better to do, my friends and I decided to view the contents contained in the channel, and this is where it got kind of weird. This is the first 2 episodes of an up-and-coming animated web series. However, upon viewing them, they felt really off. The series appeared to be paying some sort of homage, almost, to the popular comedy show South Park, but the characters moved very odd and the animations are not consistent at all. Voice acting is few and far between in the episodes, but when they do talk, it feels like someone trying to speak English, but they don't fully grasp the language. Going to the comment sections of the video, you can see that other people have pointed these things out. People say it feels like it shouldn't exist, but does. Some, including me, feel like it was made by some sort of AI deep dream sort of thing, but at the same time, I don't know what to feel about it. I guess only time will tell once episode 3 comes out and we can further dissect this show.